Very rarely, three words have cost the world as dearly as they did at the start of the millennium. Kim Kardashian may have thought she broke the internet, but let's go back and view an event that really did almost break the internet. May the 5th in the year 2000 was a very different time. Gladiator was #1 in the cinemas, while Santana and Wyclef were singing their love for Maria. But it would be a different love note which was spread across the world, causing billions of dollars of damage as the world learned what a computer virus was that day. On the morning of the 5th of May, people turned on their computers and probably went and got a coffee, as those things could take a while to start up back then. Opened up their emails, and in popped an email from Janice from accounting with "I love you" in the subject, with a little love letter text file attached. How sweet, thought this person and millions around the world. But once opened, this love bug had a bite that nobody was expecting. You see, in the year 2000, computer viruses, or a worm which this wasn't really heard or thought about. You see, junk mail came through your letterbox, and your emails usually reserved for more important stuff, with the added safe factor being it's someone from inside your contact book. Now, nowadays, as people start spamming links and speaking unusually online, people know they were hacked. But back then, this was something reserved for movies, and people's guards just weren't up to these sort of attacks. But this all changed on that Friday, the 5th of May 2000. Once a person clicked on that attachment, the virus took control. But let's go back to understand how and why it was created. Anel de Guzman, a 24-year-old college student in Manila, Philippines, a student struggling who could barely afford to pay for internet access. Well, Anel had a plan. He created a worm to steal other people's internet passwords so he didn't need to pay for the service himself. Now, a bug in Windows 95 allowed Anel to run code in email attachments when the user clicked on them. Perhaps even more damaging was the old file naming and extension system back then. You see, the worm was a Microsoft VBS file, that's Visual Basic Scripting. Now, even back in the year 2000, people would be cautious to click on a .vbs file. However, Windows used to hide the file extensions by default. Windows would pass these file names from left to right, stopping at the first period. So what did they do? They added a second one. So the file would be loveletter.txt.vbs, but people would only see it as loveletter.txt. As far as what the Guzman's "I love you" script actually did, well, it added Windows registry data so it started up on boot. Once clicked, the worm searched through any connected devices and targeted specific files, replacing any JPEGs, VBs, JavaScript, the docs, which is the file types for Word documents, MP3s and a few others, with copy of itself. Now, MP3s and other sound files were spared being overwritten as they was only simply hidden. It then sent a copy of itself to everyone in the infected PC's Microsoft Outlook address book and downloads the Barot Trojan on the infected PC. Now, the fact that the script was written in VBS allowed users to modify the script quite easily. And this led to a raft of changes and up to 25 variants of the virus spread across the internet. Now, most of these changes were mainly due to the file extensions the worm was targeting, though some were more sinister, and it's claimed that the virus was modified to make the computer unbootable upon restarting. Quite cleverly, people will change the subject and the content of the email once word got out about the virus, with virus alert and important, read carefully, just some of the examples. Though I think my favorite is forward joke, as people were sending memes all the way back then. As you can imagine, the virus had some impact, spreading from Manila in the Philippines to Hong Kong, Europe and the US. Now, estimated cost of the outbreak was in the region of $5.5 to $8.7 billion worldwide, and an estimated $10 to $15 billion to remove the worm. Within just 10 days, there were over 50 million infections, and an estimated 10% of internet connected computers in the world had been infected. When the news broke of the virus, companies and organizations scrambled to try and protect and insulate themselves. The Pentagon, CIA, British Parliament and a host of large corporations completely shut down their mail system to avoid their network being compromised and attacked. It was an unprecedented attack over the internet and one of the most destructive computer-related diseases ever. Now, with this sort of impact and this sort of cost, the world is going to want answers, and it didn't take long. Two men, Ronel Ramones and one Anel de Guzman, became targets of investigation by Philippines NBI, the National Bureau of Investigation. De Guzman, feeling the heat apparently attempting to hide evidence, removed his computer from his apartment, but forgot to remove the disk that contained the viruses, as well as information that implicated Michael Bien as a possible co-conspirator. Investigations were made into Mr. Morones and Buen, however Anel de Guzman did later state that he alone created the worm, killing the other two suspects. Now, at this point, the NBA was in a corner and they didn't know how to get out. See, they had their man in de Guzman, but what exactly was he guilty of? Nowadays, it could be brought up on a number of laws, but it's the actions of de Guzman and others why we have those laws in place. At the time, legally, de Guzman did nothing wrong. While suggested he could be charged with violating Republic Act 8484, the Access Device Regulation Act, but this is aimed more at credit card fraud. They considered charging him with the malicious mischief, a felony involving damage to property under the Philippines Revised Penal Code of 1932, a law from 1932, long before modern computers, let alone modern internet. Since there was no laws about writing malware in the Philippines at the time, de Guzman was released and all charges dropped by the state. To ensure this wouldn't happen again in the future, the Philippines enacted Republic Act 8792, known as the e-commerce law, in July 2000. Many countries around the globe followed suit, as the world learned the damage that can be done with a simple love letter.